Hello. For those who don't know me, my name is Carlos Rodriguez, or that's the short version of my name, which is Carlos Alexis Rodriguez Rosa. I always found it interesting the way the last names work in the States, and there are a lot of things about the States that I always found interesting while growing up, like the people and the language and the food. My dad still jokes that he'll learn enough English if he eats enough hamburgers. It's the little things like that that made me grow up feeling a part of it all. I was always just a half an ocean away, but still so close to the life here. Now, being here in the mainland has always been my dream. To speak English every day and to learn about the language that I always grew up loving, I'm one of the lucky ones that gets to live out that dream. And this fact makes me think of all the people like me and the life that they strive for, the American dream, and the financial and emotional stability to breathe through the days that being here gives. If you know me personally, you know that I'm always thinking. And I share those thoughts openly and candidly. You know that I'm always sharing and sparking interesting conversations. Now, I won't tell you that these conversations are easy, because talking to people who think and live differently from you is hard. It requires a kind of conviction and confidence that I don't always possess. But these conversations are important for both my growth and for the other person's. One such conversation happened just a month ago on my flight home to Puerto Rico for Christmas. I was seated next to a woman. She was a retired teacher from Minnesota, and as an education major, I naturally began asking her about her philosophy, about her students, about what she valued in her work. It was a great conversation. But as the flight continued and time went on, the subject of the conversation changed. For those of you who do not know, when one travels to Puerto Rico by plane, people tend to applaud when said plane touches ground. I always thought of this as beautiful, as a symbolic and universal feeling of happiness because we made it over the ocean. I always felt pride in applauding over the fact that I was home. This woman, however, felt like the applause was an insult to the mainland US because she saw it as us being ungrateful for being US citizens. She spoke of the rage she felt over us Puerto Ricans feeling entitled to take so much, speaking of how easy it must be to go back home after mooching off the United States. That is what the applause means to her. While I see unity and relief in the applause, the woman sees ungratefulness and disrespect. One of the biggest things I've learned so far by being here is that where we come from determines the way we see the world. Where we come from determines what we see as meaningful and important. What we learn in school and what we learn from the people around us, that all plays into who we are. And while these different experiences create gaps between us, I can't judge anyone by their experience or lack thereof. A person who grew up in a small town does not see the world the same way as someone from Miami or Minneapolis or Puerto Rico, for that matter. We all have a starting point, beginning. Mine makes me see the world differently than all of you, and yours makes you see the world differently than me. It's a fact of life, one that we often overlook because we think that we're not required to go beyond that starting point. So, after having this conversation with this woman, I sat there on the plane because I couldn't leave and just thought about my life. I thought about where I come from, about my starting point. I remembered when I would come home from school and my mother would give me writing assignments in English, prompting and asking me about school, about what I wanted to be. I think a lot about what I want to be, just like every Puerto Rican does. Then years later, I find myself here in Iowa, living my dream by myself for the first time, and I'm asked if I'm a conservative or a liberal, because people want to know the things I hold dear. Sometimes I still don't know what to answer because I come from the only place in America where politics has more to do with status than with morals. There are many things about Puerto Rico's history that I don't have time to explain, but I can tell you that Puerto Rico is run by three major political parties, each one arguing for what Puerto Ricans want the island to be. If they want it to become a state of the union, if they want it to continue being a commonwealth, or if they want to be independent. The questions that determine what political party you ascribe to is not what do you believe in, like we tend to categorize as Republican or Democrat based on those answers. It's what do you want to be? And when you ask people what they want to be, there will always be individuals from the right and the left in every argument. This is why I believe Puerto Rico has a very united society, where we don't see the moral or racial differences between us because we weren't founded on those questions. We weren't divided by those questions in the first place. And it was that very system I grew up in that shaped my view of the world. That people can coexist regardless of morals if you just ask them what they want to be. Now, there's a phenomenon that I always found beautiful about Puerto Ricans, and that's our ability to, even if we did not choose who governed us, we could choose the culture that we wanted. Some Puerto Ricans identify themselves with countries and cultures from Latin America, connected by music and language. Some still feel connected to the idea of Puerto Rico being its own entity, highlighting what has always been ours. And others, like me, identify themselves with the United States. These are things we choose, because we are blessed with the privilege to choose and love what we are. But where there are choices, there are debates. And where there are debates, there's ignorance. And where there's ignorance, there will always be violence. And I'm not claiming that our system is perfect, that our questions work to the extent that we want them to. Our violence comes in the form of indecision, of never having a clear answer to the questions we ask. We often go back and forth with administrations and policies, never paying attention to what happens to us on a grander scale. The other violence that came in the form of debt and transformed infrastructure, the questions we ask and the things we pay attention to made us forget about our history. For example, Puerto Rico used to thrive on agriculture, of coffee and sugarcane plantations, but after the invasion came the factories that took the crops' place. And as years passed and the debt increased, the factories left, but the buildings remained, so there's not enough room now to grow crops again. And due to this, and now with the islands drowning in a financial crisis, this causes people like me to decide to leave. And because I share these things, I've been often told that I'm very candid when talking about my experiences, that I'm open and unafraid to highlight the differences in culture here to what I'm used to. Because naturally, when we go somewhere new, we compare our environments to what we know. When I first arrived, I made the mistake of assuming that everyone thought the same way I did, that our starting points were similar. I began to meet people from different backgrounds, people from small towns who had never met someone like me, and people from other countries who now live here. I found that I could not relate to either. I questioned where I belonged for a long time, not knowing how to navigate a divided world like this, and then I didn't feel comfortable being back home because I learned so much by being here. I had to find new meaning in my experiences, find who I was within them again. I had to reflect. And with that reflection, I can say now the most important lesson I've learned throughout my life is that I can't avoid getting hurt, but I can use that hurt to my benefit. I can't fix all the problems that makes people like me want to leave the island, but I can claim them like Puerto Ricans have claimed everything that's ever happened to them. Because when our communities struggle, we learn and grow from that happening. We learn and grow from that struggle. I am not the first Puerto Rican to cross to the mainland, nor will I ever be the last. I can see my new home here. I can find comfort in still seeing the world through the same lens I always have, asking, what do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of friend? What kind of student? Regardless of what we believe, I think we all have similar answers to those questions. When you ask yourself those questions and you reach your answers, that influences how you interact with the people around you. Now, scaling back, remember I'm still on the plane. After we landed and people applauded, the woman I had talked to turned to me and said, "You're cute for thinking you can change the world." This is how I knew she didn't understand me. I nodded back to her and said, "Enjoy your vacation. Learn something." And with that same conviction, I stand before you today to tell you that your starting point does not determine how far you can go. After today, I want all of you to try to do 4 things. 1. Learn something about and from each other. Welcome debates and challenges as ways to grow instead of hindrance. Because what you know does not define you. What you do with what you learn from being challenged is what tells us who you are. 2. Learn to be open to others with different starting points than you. I come from a place where we are proud of our heritage, yet still open to other cultures, because we see the beauty in difference. These environments are achievable. 3. Learn something from your past, from your history. Learn about the things that happened to create your starting point. Acknowledging history opens knowledge and opens minds and hearts. And 4. Change the questions you ask. Because acknowledging history requires you to look at everything you are, right in the eye, and then ask, what do I want to be? and I hope you know the answer. Thank you.